Lane, first of all, really want to support what Tyler said. We are so appreciative of what your company is doing to support this event. I'm proud to be affiliated with you, and so again, thank you. Events like this, and particularly this event, would not have been possible if it wasn't for blockchain.com. So I really want to appreciate, really want to show my appreciation for that. So
cool. Well, thanks for having us. Appreciate the opportunity.
First of all, let's start out. You've got a pretty fascinating and diverse background. In fact, we share something interesting in common. My very first job after the Judge Green decision was I was recruited off campus into AT&T. And I spent 10 years at AT&T in product development. And I know you were at AT&T. And you've just done fascinating things. You've been in government. You've been in venture capital. You've been with Uber. Tell us a little bit about you before we start talking about blockchain.com.
Well, one of the things I've learned is the fastest way to lose an audience is to talk about the phone company as the first thing you discuss. So I'm glad to dive into that with you. But no, yeah, it's pretty cool that we both started our careers with the phone company. And they say if you haven't actually worked at the phone company in your career, you will. So good luck to everybody else. You don't escape AT&T or I guess Verizon. Yeah, so I've been fortunate to work in a lot of different industries over the years. And now I'm in crypto. The past 10 years have been really, for me, focused on tech. I was fortunate to be one of the first 100 employees at Uber, and that's pretty much shaped my perspective on tech and the world, and certainly has helped get me to where I am today. But in the intervening years since then, Uber's a pretty old company now in the tech sector. I've done a lot, and I started a company, sold a company. Got pretty involved in venture capital, pretty involved in M&A. But interestingly enough, blockchain.com was one of my first investments after I left Uber. And so I've been friends with the CEO and their leadership team for years. Got to see them grow, change, figure out what businesses worked, didn't work. Fortunately, a lot more of them are working now than they were before. And here we are today.
All right. Well, speaking about blockchain.com, blockchain.com has been around about 10 years, right?
Our 10th anniversary is October 15th.
Yeah, which is amazing in this space. And you've just seen massive growth, particularly over the last couple of years. So tell me what you guys are working on now.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with a cool stat, and then I'll tell you what we do, because we basically opened a bar and named it Bar, right? So it can be confusing to understand what our company does. So here's the cool stat that will be like, oh, maybe I should pay attention to what blockchain.com is doing. So a year ago, we had 58 million wallets, which is pretty impressive, right? 58 million. Today, a year later, we have 76 million wallets. So it took 9 years to get to that first number, right? And then only 10 to get to the second. So obviously, you all are probably part of companies or involved with organizations that are growing pretty fast. We're feeling that as well. So blockchain is a fully diversified crypto company. So we basically do two things. You all know crypto, so I'm not going to delve into pretty deep details. But on one side of our business, half of it is our retail business, right? So we've got those wallets. Of those, millions and millions of wallets, 36 million of them are verified. So we use the same metric that Coinbase does, right? So we know who they are. They're KYC'd. So that business is, buy and hold, simple buy, simple sell. We have rewards programs. We've got sort of all the basic things that you would normally have as a wallet. Those customers are worldwide in over 200 countries. So the US is important to us, but we're originally a British company. So a lot of companies in the UK and Europe. We're big in Eastern Europe, huge in Latin America, pretty big in Africa. So big all around the world. Then the other side of our business, the thing that I think has resulted in so much growth this year, is our institutional business. And so because I worked at Uber, I hate the Uber for metaphor, right? Which every company at TechCrunch Disrupt still does. But we're basically the JP Morgan for crypto, right? So that's the best way to describe it. So JP Morgan at its core, they have a consumer business, but they're pretty much just a merchant bank, right? So they do OTC, derivatives, lending, all the kind of stuff that businesses need, right? We do all of that for crypto. So on the lending side, we're number 2 behind Genesis, right? We have this gigantic lending book. I think we're over $3 $3.5 billion, almost $4 billion in loan origination. We do lots of spot OTC, right? So if you want to buy more than, I don't know, $500,000 of crypto or sell it, there's somebody sitting in a room who will help you do that. You don't need to do it yourself, give you a better rate. And then offshore derivatives, right? Because who doesn't want to put their crypto to work? We've got a bunch of other products in development. But so we have two sides of the business, right? So that's about 50-50 split in our revenue. And that business is all over the world and growing super fast.
Well, I want to unpack a couple of things that you just said. First of all, you think mentioning AT&T is bad from a crowd like this? You mentioned JP Morgan.
Fair enough. Yeah.
All right. One of the things you mentioned is your incredible growth in your wallet consumers. Your partner Peter Smith has publicly said that he wants to have 1 billion wallets by 2030. How are you going to do that?
Yeah. So, I think there's a couple reasons, a couple ways. So the first thing is we're a zero CAC business, meaning like we don't actually spend anything to really acquire customers. We market to our existing customers. They're coming to us organically. And that's for all the reasons that you all probably have experienced growth. So one of them is just turning on the marketing machine, which we're starting to look at doing, and building out our marketing team so that we can do it. We've just been very fortunate to have organic growth. The other is, there's a little bit there of just benefiting from where the economy is naturally going, right? So like, let's look at crypto worldwide. So in the Western world, right? This is my first time to Laramie. I'm sorry, I apologize. I do spend a lot of time in Montana, so I'm not necessarily not familiar with the Middle West.
They're different states.
I know they're different states,
Okay.
but I like the Middle West, home territory to me, but first time in Laramie. But there's probably a couple banks in town, right? And those banks probably don't ever run out of money. And maybe they're credit unions, your credit card always works, checking account always works, everything's fine, right? Financial system in the US for most consumers is fine. That's not true in Latin America. It's not true in Eastern Europe. It's not true in Africa. It's not true in a lot of parts of the world where like the banking system is either not trustworthy, doesn't work, runs out of money. So crypto is solving a problem, right? Is helping those consumers jump over what is an existing problem. So more and more of those consumers, and there's a lot more people there than there are here, are going to be adopting crypto. So for us to get to a billion people by 2030, a lot of it's just going to happen naturally because folks in developing worlds need crypto, right? They just need a safe store of value and they need to have easy remittances. So that's one way. The other is, if you think about it, our economy has been shifting towards the internet, right? Everything is shifting towards the internet. So what is the financial system for the internet? Well, we think it's crypto. So again, by 2030, I think there'll probably be a new leading GDP. It's likely to be the internet, and crypto will be that financial system. So it's a combination of us both marketing and taking advantage of what will be just a natural trend in that direction. We've been right in our predictions over the past 10 years, so we think we'll be right on this one.
Something else you mentioned a minute ago was blockchain.com was originally formed in UK, and you've recently set up your headquarters in Miami, correct?
Our US headquarters.
Your US headquarters.
Yeah.
I do want to point out that's about, and I looked this up, it's 2,097 miles too far east. Just letting you know that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So tell me about that setting up in the US, why you chose Miami and what exactly we have to get you to move to Wyoming.
To move to Wyoming.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good question. Okay. So yeah. So blockchain, it's a British company, right? Founded in the UK. Interestingly enough, was founded with the founder of Coinbase. We're good friends with those folks. Brian Armstrong, Peter Smith, a few other folks, they founded blockchain together. Then folks kind of went their separate ways. But we have lots of friends over there and feel like they're a good contemporary of ours. So the company has grown pretty strongly there. It's the second most valuable fintech to come out of the UK. Current valuation is 5.2 billion. So extreme success for the UK. That said, the US is obviously super important. Traditionally, the US headquarters was in New York. I don't know how many of you pay attention to crypto regulations in New York, but like it sucks, right? It's not good.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly. So hello, but license. Yeah. So we're like, all right, we can't really have our office here anymore. So Florida was pretty open. The mayor of Miami has made no secret of his attempt to attract crypto companies to the market, but a pretty hard sell to us. Regulators up and down the state did the same. And so a couple months ago, when we were looking at building out our next US headquarters, that became the place to do it. Let me tell you why. And if you can compete here, I'll bring you an office here.
All right.
So
I'm writing this down.
write it down, please. When we're building out a new office, we're not looking for space to hire 20 people, right? We're not even looking for space to hire 100 people. At this point, we're looking for space to hire 300 to 500 people. All right, so that's okay. That's not a ton of people. That's not like what Uber hires in a new office. But then who do we need? And where do we get them from? We poach them from banking, right? Because at the end of the day, that skill set is very similar to what we need. We're talking about financial settlement. We're talking about accountants. We're talking about actuaries. We're talking about all the sort of traditional financial operations skill sets that you have in banking. So we need a strong core to poach from. There are a couple of markets in the US to do that. Florida happens to be one that has a very favorable tax environment. It happens to be close to our employees that live in New York, and we can get them to move. So that was a very attractive place for us to go for all of those reasons. That's not the only place we're going to build a large office. At the moment, we're looking for a place to build what we're calling our back office. And that's going to be where we put another 300 to 500 people that are really dealing with the day-to-day settlement of those transactions globally around the world. And I live most of the time during the school year when my kids are in school in California. My preference is on the West. So
I think we'll be talking.
Okay.
All right.
Fair enough.
If there was only a university that was creating students that would, feed right into your need.
Let me know if you got one. If you know one.
If I know of one.
Yeah.
Okay. Now your background is, really a money background, a venture capital background.
Yeah.
And this year you announced a pretty big capital raise.
Yeah.
And so tell us about what your plans are for that capital. What are you going to be investing in next?
Yeah. So blockchain hit profitability about 2 years ago, which is great, right before the pandemic started. And then, as most crypto companies experienced at the end of last year into Q1 of this year, just astronomical growth. But we had an opportunity to be out in the capital markets. And so when I joined, we did 2 fundraising rounds in the first half of this year, raising about $400 million. More as an opportunistic raise and to use it for sort of strategic purposes. Our OpEx is really low. The company is pretty small, employee-wise. So we didn't really need it for overhead, but there are a couple of things we do need it for. So one is when you are a company as large as ours, your institutional clients really want to know what your balance sheet looks like, right? Because to them, it's important that you've got the ability to back up their investments. A lot of crazy things can happen in crypto, and they want to make sure that the company that's handling those finances is solvent. So at this point, our balance sheet is so large. I think it's well over 500 or 600 million. I don't remember the exact number. That it's not really a concern for most of those institutional clients. We've never had a government investigation. We've never had a fine. We've never been hacked. We're old school. We're pretty stable. We tend to be conservative in our decisions. So we're pretty attractive to those institutional clients that are getting more serious about their investments. The other is, if you're going to be a market maker, which we are for a lot of new assets that are hitting the market, you got to have deep liquidity. Because the thing you hate the most is when you're going to trade and you can't, because it's just not working. I think I was trying to buy some Matic recently on a competitor's exchange, and it just didn't work, right? Because there was no liquidity. And so we enable there to be liquidity because we make that market. The other thing is we're really active in the M&A space. We've got lots of deals in process right now. The thing in crypto is there's a lot of great ideas. There's probably even folks here with great ideas, and you're starting up companies. And great ideas, fairly easy to come by. The thing that's really hard to come by is customers. And so eventually what happens is you've got this great idea and you start running out of money because you don't have any customers to pay you for that great idea. And then you're looking for something to do with it. Well, call me, Lane@blockchain.com. I'm very interested in not necessarily buying your great idea, but buying you and the rest of your team. That's the biggest problem we face right now is scaling. So when I look at our balance sheet and I look at our fundraising, that's the number one thing I'm using it for is increasing our headcount. Because for us to get to that billion wallet number, we just need more bodies, more headcount. Right now, people are generally happy in their jobs. They're happy where they're working. So recruiting is super hard. The fastest way for me to get there is just buy other companies. So that's what I'm using it for.
Well, we're sitting here at the conference center at the University of Wyoming. So following up on a point you just made, one is really what skill sets are you looking for when you are looking for people to bring in? And, you know, what advice would you give to educators to help build that workforce that would be most valuable to you?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, so right now we need everything, but let me make, I can be a little bit more specific about that. Originally in crypto, let's call it like, I don't know, 8 years ago, and then now. So 8 years ago, excuse me, everybody in crypto, or most people in crypto, were like math nerds and gamblers, right? And that's cool because those are the people who created what is crypto today. Now we're seeing folks who come from other areas of expertise who really have no experience in crypto come to the sector. Maybe it's because they're excited about going to the moon. Maybe it's they're kind of tired of just doing what somebody else figured out in banking, 100 years ago. Whatever the reason, they're shifting into the space. And what we're finding is that people who have very strong finance backgrounds and very strong tech backgrounds make for great employees. So, if you've spent your career, working in and around logistics, probably not necessarily that useful for crypto. But if you look at the makeup of our employee base, almost everybody comes from finance or everybody comes from tech, or maybe there's a hybrid. Now, when you drill down into those two subcategories, there's a lot of different career paths, right? We're super interested, on the finance side with people who have worked in, either venture themselves, they've worked at hedge funds, they've worked as, consultants or analysts at, big consulting firms. We're looking at folks who know how to do modeling, anybody who's got sort of that financial or technical skill set. On the crypto side, it is really somebody who's been a creator themselves, somebody who's worked at another crypto company and understands the space and has a specific expertise in any one of the categories. Whether or not we have a product stood up that is in the area that you've worked in or liked, that definitely doesn't mean we don't have R&D going. We have a lot more employees working on things that aren't necessarily public than we do working on public activities. And then here are the outliers. Here are the people we always hire that don't fit into those two categories. Engineers, any kind of engineer, right? Just like every other tech company, an insatiable appetite for engineers. And then the other is founders. I want to say roughly 20% of our company are former founders themselves. So people who started companies that, maybe they had a 6-month run, maybe they exited and they're just working because they have nothing better to do. But we have a lot of founders in our company. That sort of tenacity, you need it in crypto because a lot of times you're sort of ramming your head against a wall until you figure out the solution to a problem or product market fit. So we always are interested in those types of folks. So I'd say for your students, go create a product, invent something, create something, and then call us.
Perfect. In our conversation, we've talked about you being involved in 2 regulated companies. Well, Uber wasn't regulated; it fought the regulators. AT&T was a regulated company.
Yeah.
And I think we all know that regulation right now is a challenge. So given your experience, what do you think about the regulatory challenges that we face today? And if you had a magic wand, how would you think that those should be addressed?
Well, Stephen, this is my favorite thing to talk about. So if you're really bored about So if you're really bored, if the regulation is like the most boring thing for you, this is the part where you should check your email or Twitter and let me know what's going on. And I used to work in government, and then it was one of the things I did at Uber. Okay, so let's first talk about history for a second. Not ancient history, tech history. So Uber did the ask for forgiveness model. Right? We all know the story. They launched, they asked for forgiveness from regulators at the state level, at the federal level, all around the world. And it worked, right? Permanent regulatory frameworks for Uber all over the place. Soon after, Airbnb took sort of a in the middle approach, right? Where they asked for permission, they asked for forgiveness. But in both cases, it took about 2 years for them to go from the point where regulators woke up and realized that their thing was real to the point that they actually had permanent regulatory frameworks. It was like a 2-year period. And for Uber, this was like 2013 to 2015-ish. And for Airbnb and other home sharing, it was like 2014 to 2016. The same thing is happening with crypto. So for a long time, crypto was just an idea, right? And like a lot of people were working on it. It was interesting, and it was just kind of annoyance to regulators all around the world. And then something happened over the last year in which regulators woke up and said, oh, wow, this is actually real. We probably need to regulate it. And at the same time, companies like ours and Coinbase and others said, you know what? We need a permanent regulatory framework upon which to continue building our companies, because we exist in a regulatory gray area. And although we may self-regulate, that's not enough. We need permanent rules to play by. You can stand up and walk by. It's okay. I'm not gonna be distracted. I told you it's my favorite topic. I won't get distracted. But I appreciate the courtesy.
At this point, Rich, just stand up.
It's all good. And then the third thing that has happened is that we're starting to see some consumers harmed by their experience in crypto, and they need some sort of recourse. They're going to regulators, and we're seeing reaction from those regulators. Okay, so we have these three things happening. We want to be regulated. Regulators got to do something about it, and there is some consumer harm. Okay, so now we're at this point where everybody agrees it's time for regulation. So where are we? Okay, so when I think about regulation, I think about three markets. I think about the EU, I think about the UK, and I think about the US. Because basically what happens in those three places will spread to the rest of the world, right? There's always like chaos going on in China, and that's common. You look at the newspaper over the past 10 years, there's always chaos with China and crypto, like that'll keep going. And there'll be fluctuations across Latin America and so forth. The UK is the furthest along. So the FCA, which is like their SEC, the FCA created a framework. It's not quite finished yet. It's a registration process. There's 130 companies that are in this process of getting their license in the UK. We're one of them. We're pretty far along. That's going to get settled. The UK, their politics is very polite, right? So they are cooperating. We're cooperating. They're having discussions. They're sort of proud of their crypto forward thinking. Then you've got the EU. There's this process called MiCA in the EU, which it'll be 2024 before they have regulations in place, but it's all being discussed right now. And that will impact sort of all the member states. All right, so that's in process. We're working hard there to make sure that those regs are comfortable for crypto companies. There are some watchdogs, Lagarde in general, at the EU that are going to make it kind of hard, but we're working on it, right? So the EU kind of comes next, but we feel good about that. Then you got the US, and the US is a mess, except for Wyoming. The US is a total mess. And our politics here, you all know very well, is very polarized. And what's interesting is that in the US, the far right and the far left, I don't care what your politics are, but your far right and the far left are like anti-crypto. And in fact, those are the two groups that should be super into crypto. They're the ones who are against it. And we're faced with now kind of a new sort of patchwork of regulations developing across states. You've got the federal government asserting authority between agencies. You've got some saber rattling in Congress, and nobody knows what's really going to happen. I know what's going to happen now. So let me tell you. I'll fill you in. So just like the current administration a couple of months ago came out with these like new proposed tax regulations that everybody freaked out about, right? Especially if you work in tech, like, oh my God, I gotta like shift my tax residency to St. Kitts immediately. And now we see the new tax proposals have come back and they're swinging a little bit more towards the middle. What we're seeing the SEC do is start over here, right? They're negotiating. And we know that everybody who's an appointee of the government is looking to advance their career. And so there's definitely a lot of saber rattling going on there. We have different agencies that are advocating for control over this new sector. And then you've got Congress. Last year, Congress passed over 30 bills related to crypto, but nobody talks about that. Agencies did about 60 different regulatory maneuvers around crypto. So it's all been happening. It's all moving. There's lots of machination. Here's where we're going to end up. Nothing's really going to happen for a while. We've got midterm elections happening pretty soon. Odds are the Republicans take the House, maybe the Senate. Our government in the US moves slow. So I think we're probably about 2 years away from having some kind of resolution to what's going on here. Just like I said before, just like it happened to Uber, just like Airbnb. We will get regulatory certainty, but we're going to start with a lot of extreme conversation, a lot of press about that because it's really exciting, it's interesting. The pendulum's going to swing back and forth. In the interim, though, because there's not clarity, we're going to have states advocating for their own regulations. We're going to see enforcement actions like we're seeing in Texas and Jersey, Maryland. We'll probably see some other states wake up in enforcement actions. We've not seen anything out of California yet, and we will. New York is going to wake up. And then we're going to see states be pretty progressive in trying to set the bar for what the regs should be. States like Wyoming, states like Florida. This is how regulation develops in our country, right? And that's okay. It's a mess. Here's what crypto has to do. And if you work for a big crypto company and you haven't started doing this yet, please do it. Hire somebody to work in crypto policy, or at least hire a lobbyist. What happened with the infrastructure bill was crypto was caught off guard. Oh my gosh, taxes. Who would have thought? We're asking to be regulated. We can't be upset if the regulations they're proposing we don't necessarily like, right? Especially if we don't have a seat at the table. We've built out a policy team. Our contemporaries are doing that. We want a seat at the table, so we're not on the menu. You got to do the same thing at the states. It's expensive, and you don't necessarily see the benefit to the expense right away. But if you don't, what's going to end up happening, right? You're going to end up with regulations that's going to take you years to fix. I'll stop talking 1 second.
No, well,
the last thing I'll say here is the lesson I learned from AT&T is that AT&T is a forever company, right? AT&T will always exist in some form, right? They control the pipes. All of us use the pipes all the time. It's not going anywhere. And they've spent 100 years creating regulations and tweaking regulations to enable their business to be perfectly profitable everywhere they exist. Uber is doing the exact same thing. Uber is a forever company. Whether or not they get acquired by Time Warner or whoever else in the future, they're a forever company. They're not going anywhere. They're doing the same thing. They've got a gigantic policy team and they're tweaking regulations and will continue to do so to make it so that they can continue to be profitable everywhere. Crypto will do the same thing, right? This is where it starts. This isn't a fight that we win today and that everything is fine forever. This is where it starts, and then we will keep fighting forever. It is the Full Employment Act for people like me, people who are lobbyists, people who work in government affairs and policy. But you've got to wake up to it and realize you have to invest in it now.
All right, last question, because then I want to open up to the floor because
cool, let's do it.
Quite frankly, getting an opportunity to ask you questions, I think is something most people can't do.
Cool.
You've got competitors.
Yeah, contemporaries.
Okay. What differentiates you from your contemporaries?
All right, so is this time for me to say something controversial?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. So I think there's onshore and there's offshore, right? Onshore companies, and those I consider onshore Western world companies, US, UK, Western Europe. We self-regulate, right? We believe in the rule of law. We believe that consumers shouldn't be fleeced. We believe in consumer protection. We believe in financial literacy. We believe in the fundamentals of what makes our countries great, what helps people be safe in their investments, and we believe in solving problems for people. Like my humble belief is that most Americans don't necessarily understand why they need crypto. We do, but they don't. What's going to be the thing to get them into crypto? I think it's probably DeFi, right? But it's not there yet. So most Americans, they don't have access to the kinds of yields that people on Wall Street do. Right? I don't know what a great rate of return is for an average person. If you're getting 6% on your investments, I don't know what's an average CD, 3.5% or less. That's probably pretty good. If you're, yeah, I know you're laughing. If you're sophisticated and you've maybe put together a little bit of money and you've got some real estate investments and you can get upwards of 8 to 10%. Oh my God, you're doing great, right? But average yields on Wall Street, right? You're a hero if you're getting 20% or 30%. What if we could enable consumers, average Americans, to get access to yields that are 20% or 30%? That's wealth creation, right? That's our job, is to help people build wealth, make their lives better. That's what we need to do, right? So I think that, when we're looking at the trajectory, where we're going, what's next? My hope is that, companies like ours, the onshore ones, will continue to allow these types of products to be developed so that we're not just helping ourselves build successful companies, but we're helping our neighbors and communities build wealth, be more successful, lead better lives. Offshore companies, the ones that offer you 1,000% margin products, that basically just mean you're going to lose your entire investment overnight. They're just trying to make money, right? And are trying to fly, under the radar. And if you're trying to do something illegal, you go to an offshore company. You would definitely not come to a blockchain or a Coinbase because you would get caught instantly. So I'm less bullish on those offshore. And I think that regulators in the US have woken up to the fact that they're worried about illicit activity, but they actually got to look offshore and not onshore. Our companies are trying to do the right thing. And we just need help doing that. We need a permanent regulatory framework to do it. So when I look at the overall market, global assets are about $500 trillion. Crypto makes up 2 trillion of that, less than 0.5%, right? We're small, we're tiny. We got a lot of room to grow. So do I worry about competing with Coinbase? I don't. We got to make the pie bigger, not steal customers from each other. And they feel the same way. So that's really where I kind of set my sights on competition. I'm not so worried about those guys offshore. I hope they have to clean up their act. But the onshore folks, we're in this together.
All right, I want to open up the floor to some questions. Anybody have a question?
I don't know if you need the mic. You can just shout it. It's a small room. Yeah. Oh, okay.
Hi, you had mentioned trying to get so many people into wallets and the start of crypto. I'm curious what your thoughts are about El Salvador and how quickly they were able to get 350,000 people in their Chivo wallets and start to give them access to crypto.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think there's probably smarter folks in this room than me on this, but if a country's national currency is crypto, doesn't the US have to recognize it as a global currency, right? Don't we have to accept it as a national currency?
We talked about that in class.
Oh, you did?
That's an incredibly good question.
Yeah.
Because is it not now a foreign currency?
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah. Look, I think that's the perfect example of crypto solving problems. Right. So, you've got banks that are unreliable. You have a currency whose valuation fluctuates all the time. But let me ask you this question. So, if you live in El Salvador and you need a place to store your value and you decide to store it in Bitcoin and then Bitcoin doubles in value, right? You basically have been lifted from one socioeconomic class to another, right? Your life has changed dramatically. That's incredible. Isn't that the point, right? I'm sure there's lots of conversations here about the technologies and why they're great and how to innovate. Yeah, it's awesome. But what's the point of this? Why are we doing this, right? And I agree, there are problems with our current financial system and certainly problems over the world. But I think El Salvador, there are going to be a lot of problems with, them shifting quickly. But I think it's our job to figure out how to solve those. But it's in service of helping people live better lives and not having to worry about whether or not their current value in their wallet can help them pay for their basic necessities, or if it helps them create a better life for themselves and their kids. That's what we should be doing. That's the greater purpose. That's why I'm here. That's what excites me. Totally. Yeah, when I first started working with blockchain years ago, the thing I was excited about was they were trying to solve the remittance issue. That was the focus, was how do we make this easier? Because it's so expensive and so hard. And I'm what a noble cause, right? Moving money across borders. Americans don't think about that, right? It's a very rare problem for someone in the US to be worried about a remittance. It's a very common problem in most of the world.
One more question?
Monetary sovereignty and national sovereignty have been tied together for millennia. And what we are endeavoring in the crypto space particularly is segregating those two. So what replaces that, I don't want to say control, but literally the control of national and monetary sovereignty being coupled when they are decoupled? What does the society both nationally and globally look like at that point?
Yeah, I definitely don't have a crystal ball or a magic wand. But look, I personally think there's a place for multiple monetary systems. There has to be. The role of the US dollar in the global economy can't be discounted, right? It's there are a lot of, maybe this is a controversial hot take, I don't know. There's a lot of folks who are yeah, crypto, get rid of the dollar, replace it all. That's ignoring how our financial system works, right? There's a reason that, we calculate the price of oil based on the US dollar. Most of the world's debt is based on the US dollar. It's we can't change that overnight without collapsing our economy. But there's definitely room for multiple financial systems. And so, I do think that there's a world in which you've got sort of your home currency and your global currency, right? And it makes sense to have multiple options. In many parts of our lives, we have multiple options for how we do lots of things, right? You can choose different options for transit. You can choose different options for where you live. Like, it makes sense that it would be the same with currency as well. I think we've just spent a lot of time thinking that there's only, you're only allowed to use and transact one currency. Isn't it crazy that, like, in your bank account, you really only can hold one currency? Like, it seems wild to me, right? Like, but you go to your blockchain account and you can have, 50 different currencies. So I think, I don't know if this is necessarily a direct answer to your question, but I think the future is probably one in which we have multiple different currencies. That's probably what frightens, regulators the most, because we definitely don't want to weaken the sovereignty of things like the US dollar that, the fragility of our global economy is based on. But I think there's a safe way to do it. And fortunately, there's a lot of smart friends of all of ours working in DC and in Brussels and in London trying to figure it out.
Well, Lane, again, I can't thank you enough for the support you've given to the university and
Welcome.
for coming out and speaking with us. Truly, I really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.